Hello, my name is Logan Kahler. I'm with the Boone News-Republican. Today we have a special guest. Today in the office we have Pam Nystrom. Pam is running for school board. School board elections are coming up here pretty soon. It's going to be November 5th.
Yes.
And Pam just stopped by to kind of give us a little bit of information about herself and what her background is like, and she's here to persuade you to vote for her. All right, Pam.
Well, thank you.
Tell me about yourself.
Okay, I grew up in central Iowa. My hometown is Jefferson, and my husband and I lived in Missouri for 15 years. We moved back to Boone then, his hometown, in 1984, and our children were in Lowell at the time. Our son was in Lowell and our daughter was in Franklin.
Yeah.
And we lived kind of in between, and we've lived in our home now for all these years, for 35 years. I like to say I've gone to school every year since I was 5, because I have been in education my whole career. And then I worked for the state of Missouri at one of the regional centers as a speech therapist. Went back and got my master's degree in special education so I could teach there. Then I taught in the public school system in Albany, Missouri, before we moved back here, and moved here in 1984.
Yeah.
And I worked for Heartland AA, the Area Education Agency, as a consultant. I worked out of the Ames office. And then in 1988, they had a opening at the Boone District for a special classroom. And I really missed teaching a lot. And so I had applied, before we moved, I had applied for jobs with the Boone District, and didn't have any success. So I thought I'm going to try again, and started teaching for Boone then in 1988.
Wow.
And I taught at Franklin.
Yeah.
And about 1996, my son graduated from high school. My daughter had graduated in 92. He went away to college, and I started working on my advanced degree then at Iowa State.
Yeah. I heard that you had your doctorate.
Yeah, I have my doctorate in education and its curriculum and instruction.
Yeah.
But then I went back and got a lot of hours. I have a lot of hours.
Yeah, no kidding.
And my administrative endorsement, and was hired to be then the principal of Page and the former Bryant Elementary in 2003. Yeah. And that's where I really got to work with kindergartners. Kindergartners are special. That book, Everything You Learned in Kindergarten, that's true. And I learned a lot. But one of my guidelines is that you learn something new every day. And I just think you do. You learn something new every day. One of the main reasons that I'm doing this, running for school board, and I showed you the back of my shirt, 10 good reasons why and hundreds more.
Yeah.
I have 3 grandchildren here in Boone. I'm really blessed with that. And 7 great nieces and nephews.
Wow.
And the age range is 14. My oldest granddaughters are 14. I have 2 granddaughters who are 14. And my youngest, little Johnny, is 1. And so there will be kiddos that I love in this school district for a very long time. Yeah. And kind of my guiding ideal is that educators always say we're supposed to do what's best for kids. And I would try so hard to do that. That's been a guiding principle in my teaching career, as an administrator. The last couple years I worked away from the classroom up in central office. And I did miss, being around the kids. And I retired then in 2013.
2013.
Yeah.
In 2013, what was your last position?
I was director of special services, so I worked with the different grant programs like Title I, special education, our Excel program, ESL, all the different support programs for students. Yeah, and the preschool program. I monitored the preschool program. Got to work with all the teachers that way, got to know all the teachers that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and curriculum director. And so as we upgraded materials and things, that was really very interesting, and got to know all the teams in the different disciplines. Yeah. So I was busy till the end.
Wow. The resume just keeps getting longer and longer and longer and longer.
Yes, and when I retired, I had good friends who'd retired who said, we have things for you to do.
Yeah.
And you stay very, very busy volunteering then and doing different things.
No, definitely. So then, I came up with so many questions, but now okay. So with all of your experience working firsthand as an educator, working in the schools, we can get to your administrative background later. Your experience hands-on, how do you believe that'll help you as you campaign to become a school board member? Or how do you think that will help you once you are a school board member?
Well, you know, over the past 6 years, I know a lot of people from being in the district so long, and people will still come up and ask me questions, and I'll say, well, that'd be a good question for somebody on the board. Why don't you call a board member?
Yeah.
And I just think that my background working with parents a lot as a teacher, one of my 4 basic principles that I find very important. One of them is good, transparent communication between home and school. Yeah, and I think you build that by being open and being a good listener, and seeing, that you're going to advocate for parents because you're going to advocate for all their kids, and that type of thing, and be willing to listen and talk with them. I think my career helped me become a good listener to parents. Yeah.
Moving on to the administrative side with your experience, tell me, boy, I can't even. That's impressive. That's a long list of experience that you have.
Well, thank you. I really feel like it was just such a wonderful opportunity for me after I moved back to Iowa.
Moving into looking into the future. Say you get elected to be a school board member. What would be one of the first initiatives that you would take?
Well, I believe that, and again, this is one of my 4 top priorities, we're going into a time where we're going to be hiring a new superintendent. And I've been through that process. And I know how important it is to get a good cross-section of individuals who represent our community on interview teams. And so I think I bring a lot to the table when it comes to that experience, because I have participated in those groups as an administrator, as a principal, and as a teacher, and as a parent. Yeah. And so I think that's a very important time for our district right now. Is that we're going to, be going through that process. I think the board probably is well on its way to preparing for that. And the next steps just are very sensible. But you need a lot of input, and you need a lot of feedback about how people are perceived. Yeah.
Okay. Here's a question. Say you're put into a situation where you're on the board, and your entire team disagrees with the decision that you make. How do you cope with that? Say majority rules and they make a move into a different direction that you don't necessarily agree with. Would you take that personally, or would you move on, or how would you handle that?
I really believe that before you go into any decision making, you need to get your facts, and you need to get your documentation, your facts, your research. We're to be research driven. We're to have data that supports your point of view. To just decide you want to do something or you don't want to do something, you really need to be prepared. And I had a good professor tell me one time that your viewpoint is just an opinion unless you have the facts to back it up. And so you need to be prepared. But I think I wouldn't take anything personally. I mean, I think you really can't take things very personally at all, because you're really not representing yourself. You're representing the community. You're representing students, you're representing parents, you're representing teachers. And so if you've got a lot of information from those constituents, you present your viewpoint or your idea. And if it doesn't happen, I don't think you can have, an attitude about that. I think you go on.
Right.
Yeah, because we're to work as a team. We're to work as a team. We're to represent those constituencies. Yeah.
Yeah, I threw a little curveball at you. I thought I'd throw a little fast one at you to see what you're thinking.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. I'll ask you a question that I asked another individual who's also running. So, were you at the last school board meeting?
I haven't been to a school board meeting for a while. I am a coordinator with this project called Friday Food Friends. And so we would go every year in August to ask permission if we could go put packages of food in lockers.
Yep.
And we keep the kids' identities very, very private. All that our delivery people have is a name and a locker number, that type of thing. So I haven't been to a board meeting, but every month I read through the agenda, I read through the reports, I read through the minutes the following month. And so I've kept in tune that way. Yeah, and so no, I wasn't at the last board meeting, but I know that the school resource officer happened, and I was like, yes, good.
So you agree?
I agree.
We need to have an SRO in school.
Yeah, when I was at the middle school, after Bryan Elementary was closed, and Chris Myers then came on board as the early childhood principal at Page and Lincoln, I was at the middle school for a couple years and worked with the 5th and 6th grade. The 5th had just moved out there, and the 6th graders had come in from United. And, I worked in that capacity. And so I got a broader base of what it's like and that type of thing. But back to that question, I was at a lot of board meetings, and saw and heard a lot of things and knew how important it was to read through those minutes and that type of thing. And we had an SRO at the time, Dave Waters. He was wonderful. Yeah.
I remember it had came up a handful of times on the agenda at the school board meetings, and they kind of teeter-tottered on whether or not they wanted to put the money into it, but they did. And I was curious to hear what every candidate thought about that, because safety in the schools is definitely a essential component.
And this world is a hard place for kids to be. I mean, in 6 years, there has been so much more, what I would say, a cultural interference for young people. So many more things they have to contend with.
That's a good way to word it. I like that.
Well, thank you. But I have grandkids, and so, I harp at them a little bit about, you get your nose off that phone screen right now, you're here to talk to me.
Yeah, no kidding. That's how we are. If we're having dinner with the family, it's like, you don't necessarily get told, you get the looks.
You get the look?
Look, like, what are you doing? Like, you can bring up your phone and show us something cool, but the moment you're on Facebook, it's like, okay,
you're done. Yeah.
Well, all right, Pam. Thanks for stopping in.
Well, thank you for having me come in. Yeah.
It was a pleasure.